Bam.
That's so creepy.
Yes, it is. I wonder if the recording can hear that, though. If not, we just started with "That's so creepy." Okay, so I always wonder if the recording picks that up. Okay, so we are here today, and the topic is Psuke de Zimra. Psuke de Zimra, which is at the beginning of the prayers, of the daily prayers. For those who were asking, it starts at Hodu, and then ends essentially at Baruch Hu, at the Yishtabach. Or if you daven Nusach Ashkenaz, that was Nusach Sfard. If you daven, or also Eidat HaMazrach Sfardi as well. If you daven Nusach Ashkenaz, so then it starts with Bruk Shamar and goes to Yishtabach. Okay?
Oh, okay, Beseder.
Beseder. Okay, so literally, Psuke de Zimra means Psukim shel Zimra. Zimra is mirot, right? Verses of song, hence the top of the page, which sounds so exciting. I know, verses of song. It sounds like I'm in a Shakespearean, whatever. But here we go. So we're going to get a little bit into it. We're going to get deeper into it. We're going to get into some deep concepts, and then we're going to come back to the whole song thing. Okay? So before we get into it, just quick understanding and quick thought about the concept of an experience, right? And in life, what we're going for, and when we're in a real relationship, that means being in that moment, right? That means being conscious, right? So it's an important thing, and that's going to be what we're talking about today, is recognizing that an experience is in the moment, right? Which means to say that before an experience happens, we could be anticipating the experience, right? After the experience happens, we can have a nice memory of the experience, right? But experience is happening in the present, right? And so therefore, it means to say that there's a concept of oneness going on. There's a concept of connection going on in that moment of consciousness. And so the same thing can be said also of love. And remember, when we're talking about praying, well, at least for today, the angle we're taking on it is we're talking about a relationship. We're talking about a love. So if you think about a love relationship, right, it's alive when the loving is happening, right? And the loving means that there's two components to the loving, right? The loving means it involves, like, it needs to have conscious participation, right? So it means to say, like, what do I mean by conscious participation? Participation, I mean, like, there's something doing, there's some action being taken, even if it's just like an intent, but there's something going on. Ideally, especially in this human world of action, that if there's an ongoing relationship, a relationship of love, so you have moments, right? You have moments. It could be moments of sitting at a table. It could be moments of going on a vacation together. It could be all sorts of moments. It could be going through a certain situation, a struggle or whatever, but you go ahead and you align yourselves together and you like have in mind one another and you're going ahead and you're doing something together. So that's something that's happening. So that's participation. What I mean by conscious participation is a person can do something, but mindlessly, right? So that there should be consciousness, there should be intent, right? I can do you the biggest favor in the world, but if I was sleepwalking when I did it, right? If you're like, hey, I need $1 million, and I'm like, okay, no problem. I wake up in the middle of my sleep and I go to the bank and I push the right code and I take out of the ATM $1 million. I just did something for you. I participated. I gave to you, but there was no consciousness there. So was there a connection there? Was there love involved there? No, right? At least that was not the experience that I experienced when I did the action, right? And so we're going to delve into. So let's delve into this. We're going to pick up what we just said. We're going to talk about it in a few minutes. We're going to go pick up with that conversation. But I want to just do a source or two here that we have. And we'll see where it takes us. Okay, here we're gonna just begin with one of a famous teaching from the Rambam. That's Maimonides, Mishnah Torah Yesodei Torah 2:10. He says like this: Hakadosh Baruch Hu makir amito v'yodea ota kamot shehi. Hashem is, right. God being infinite, absolutely, quote unquote. God recognizes himself, right? Whatever that means, as it is. But in the Yodea Bara Shehi, sorry, Ve'eno Yodea B'deya Shehi Chutz Mimenu Kemo She'anu Yodim. right? She'enanu v'datenu echad, right? So meaning to say, a lot of times, by the way, when we talk about God, we talk in negatives, right? But really they're positives, right? Can God, hold on a second. Usually there's a lot of stupid examples that come up to mind. Like, and by stupid, I mean they're because there are stupid examples. But hold on, there's nothing. People say God can't.
Like a rock that's too heavy for him to lift.
No, that's a separate convo. Whatever. A lot of people like to put limits on God, but really the point is that, like, because Hashem is so beyond that thing, so you're calling it a can't because it's something you do. But the only reason that you do that thing is because there's an inherent limitation to you that opens the door for you to go ahead and do that thing that you're going to call that thing a positive. But the fact that God doesn't need to do that thing or isn't pushed to do that thing is a sign that God's so beyond that thing. So inherent in the thing that we call positive is an inherent negative. Is an inherent lack. I know. Can I give an example, right?
I think I understand.
Like go ahead, give
Hashem
me
is
an example.
so involved in like what's going on with the world. How can he help you get a job? No.
I'm trying to say something that what can he not do, right? Like Hashem can't. Hashem. No. You guys are way too lofty. Hashem can't eat a hamburger. Okay.
Well,
Hashem
yeah,
can't eat a hamburger.
obviously.
Well, obviously, yeah. But
We'll ask that question.
Hold on. People say stupid stuff like this. Okay, people say stupid stuff like this. Hashem can't eat a hamburger. Like I could do it. Like so, Hashem's limited. It's like no. The reason why you call eating a hamburger as something is because there's such a limitation that opens the door to the capacity for you to eat a hamburger. So you call it a positive, right? But really the point is that positive is rooted in a grand negative, in a grand lacking, okay? So this is just a stupid example for a stupid thing, right? People say there's stupid questions, right? No, people say there's no stupid questions. There's no shortage of stupid questions. Okay, so doesn't mean to ask them. If you have them, you have to have them. You have to ask them. But like, let's not pretend like there aren't stupid questions. So anyway, so he doesn't though think out, quote unquote, outside of himself, right? Because the point is that we think outside of ourselves. We can think about the thing we saw in the news, whatever it is, right? Because there's an inherent limitation in us. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. There's an inherent limitation of us, and therefore that leads to a certain sense of fractured reality, right? Fragmented reality. Right, but Hashem and his awareness, so to speak, and his life or life force or whatever, it's all one, right? Right? Because if that wasn't the case, then you'd be breaking down God into pieces, and you'd say, like, as if there's numerous gods you'd be talking about, right? That's also what sometimes people ask, okay, how could it be that there isn't, maybe there's more than one infinite being? No. The whole concept of infinite means beyond limitations of time and space. As soon as you say, if you try to cut it up somewhere, split it up somewhere, you're ready by definition, right? Okay, wherever that ends and the other one begins is two, right? Nevertheless, the Lashem says that there's more than one. So I don't know what to do with that. But it does say such a thing. Anyway, so I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just going to stick with the one concept. So anyway, and I mentioned that also, especially because today was his yard site. So I throw that in there. But so we said that already. So this is the idea of a yichud Hashem, that there's one God, and by one God, we don't mean that there's one we don't mean one as opposed to 2, 3, and 4. Of course, we mean one as opposed to the concept of numbers altogether, right? Important point. And so he says, Nimtzeit, so it comes out, Omer, comes out the saying that we'd like to say, Hu hayodea, v'hu hayodua, v'hu hadeya, atzma. Right, that God is the knower, God is the known, and God is the knowledge. Right, you ever heard that one before? They like talking about that one, right? It means to say that kol echad means to say it's all oneness, right? But that's the point that we're trying to show here. Right? He says here also, this is something that's kind of difficult. This is impossible to actually like truly make sense of in our limited brains. But the truth is, this is sharing what I'm trying to share, right? Which is that what does it mean? It's all like that for God. It's all one. It's all happening now, so to speak. Again, all these words are not good, right, for God. I can only use these words because I'm rooted in my limited experience, so then I share from that place, right? But what does it mean? It means to say, though, that we're in a certain sense, that's how our life is supposed to operate as well, like to be in the moment. The Baal Shem Tov has different meditations, I'm sure others as well, different meditations about being in the present moment, right? Step into the present moment. Okay, what is Hashem creating right now? What is Hashem? Hashem is creating my body right now. Hashem is creating my consciousness right now. Hashem is creating my awareness. Hashem is creating my neshama. So to step into that, like there's meditations like this, where we contemplate these things. And the point is, because that's when life is happening, in the moment, right? In the experience, which is in the moment. And so this is the idea also when we mentioned already the concept of a love relationship. We're talking about experience. Same thing also when we're talking about a song as well, right? So you have, like, if a person has sung a song to their beloved, so then again you have a nice memory. If you will sing a song, maybe you're anticipating it, maybe you're anxious about it, but when you step into it and you are doing the singing, that's when the experience is happening, right? It's funny, a lot of people also, like a lot of kids, let's say younger kids, when they're like about to do their bar mitzvah or something like that, laning, right? So at first people are nervous, whatever, but they practice it and they know it well, let's say, right? So when at first they're nervous about it, but as soon as you start doing it, 2 psukim in, you're good, because you know it, and you step into it, and you step into that role, and it's a very nice feeling. And so the point is also, when you're singing, when you are in the song, when you are doing the singing, right? Okay, so that's like a moment of ecstasy. It's a moment of fulfillment. I'm actually living whatever that song is about. I'm living whatever that song represents, right? So you're experiencing the relationship in that moment. You're experiencing that moment of love, right? And so there's a certain oneness that's going on there. I'm not talking about it. I'm not looking outside of myself for something that's going to happen in the future. I'm not looking in the past, what once was, right? I'm one with that experience. It's all happening now, right? It's the same thing, of course, with love, right? I think we've spoken about here before, that essentially the experience of love means that it's the experience of oneness, even in two-ness. Right, and so the same thing can be said is what we're looking for in our relationship with Hashem, right? Is looking to have that experience, have that consciousness, and be living it, and being in a oneness situation. So every morning when we wake up in the morning, we say, okay, as Jews, this is what we want to do. We want to sing that song, and that's what Pesukei Zimra is all about. It's to wake up and to obviously, we looked at the Yadayim, we spoke about brachot, we spoke about sacrifices, we spoke about all that kind of stuff. But then also, okay, every morning, to experience a love relationship with Hashem. And so we are involved in singing. So imagine we take that perspective and actually jump into Pesukei Zimra with that perspective. So for those of you who have never said Pesukei Zimra before, say like, okay, whatever. But for a lot of people, kind of go through it in a, you've been to shul before, yes?
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that we knew like the actual melody.
You can make your own melody.
I know the ones from 3rd grade that I learned, but like.
So use whatever you want. If you like it, go for it. If not, that's fine. Make up your own.
Search
Do like what
Spotify.
Shomer, search on Spotify, take a Yishai Rebo song and put it to Baruch Shamar, do your thing, whatever you want. But there definitely is a thing, right? There definitely, you see, look Rav Shlomo Carlebach did the Kabbalah Shabbat, so okay, do that Pesukei Zimra. Okay, so but that is what it's supposed to be. I mean, it is called verses of song, right? There's an idea that it's supposed to be a concept of song. So, and you know what? Even if you're not singing it, so if you can in your heart be feeling those feelings of song, even if a person saying it in a faster way, so even that is something that's more towards the idea of it being a song and being a relationship and thinking about it in that way. And the truth is, of course, not only are you supposed to be doing this in the morning, the truth is this is a concept of relationship we're supposed to be having with Hashem at all times, right? And really all of life in Judaism is supposed to be this way, to be conscious in the present moment in order to really experience, right? So a lot of times we lose sight of this, right? like imagine the story. Imagine a person is climbing up a mountain, right? And the guy begins a mountain. It's like a 4-week climb.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, it's just, yeah, it's just an example. Like I mean, it could be a ridiculous example. That's fine. I sometimes have those just ridiculous examples to make the point. But imagine a person starts off this climb. It's supposed to be a 4-week climb at the mountain, and then a week into his climb, right? So his best friend shows up with like a helicopter, floating there, and he sees his buddy climbing up the mountain. He's like, "Hey, what's going on over there?" He's like, "Dude, what does it look like? I'm freaking climbing this mountain." And the guy says back, "Well, what's your goal?" And the climber says, "My goal is to get to the top of the mountain." So the guy in the helicopter says, "Okay, if that's your goal, to get to the top of the mountain, check this out. I got this fat new helicopter. I got leather interior. The AC's blasting. Jump in. It looks like you got 3 weeks left. I'll get you up there in 10 minutes." So what does the mountain climber say? No, he doesn't. He says no. He's not actually going anywhere. He's just doing it for the experience of climbing the mountain, you understand? So he says no. Now, why does he say no? After all, shouldn't he say yes if his goal is to get to the top of the mountain? Answer is that wasn't his goal, right? His goal isn't to get to the top of the mountain. Really, he thinks his goal is to get to the top of the mountain. He's focusing on getting to the top of the mountain, but that wasn't really the goal, right? The goal is really, he wanted to be the experience of being a mountain climber. He wanted to climb the mountain. So really, when he understands that, understands that really the goal is the experience is being experienced in every step of the way. So it's in the moment. It's not some goal at the end, right? So obviously he has this goal of getting to the top, but that's not really the goal, right? That's the shallow goal. That's the first level goal. That's what I have to think about in order to get myself going and have just some direction to actually experience this. But really, the experience is the goal is really in that I want to experience myself in it. The goal is in the climb, and even more than in the climb. The goal is that I'm a mountain climber. Let's say that's my essence. Let's say that's my drive. Let's say that's how I envision myself or who I want to be. Okay, so then how do I actually be who I want to be? Is by doing that thing that I am, or that in this case that I think that I am, right? So that's the thing. In terms of our relationship with Hashem is the same thing, right? So often we're focused on this idea that like, okay, I'm going to do, right, this world is a waiting room for the world to come, right? And so it's like, okay, so it's all for this grand banquet at the end, right? That's what right? And okay, we need that imagery sometimes. We need to get ourselves motivated. We definitely need to have a concept of Yirat Hashem, awe of God, awe of Yirat Onesh, awe of negative consequences of our actions. We need that sometimes. But hopefully, if we're going to get a little Kabbalistic here, right, and we're going to get a little bit higher level of thinking, right, the idea really, on a deeper level, is very different, right? Instead of setting up this story as like, okay, there's this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Just work really hard, and then you're going to get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? And that's one level. We need that. Our 5-year-old self needs that. The Gemara even gives things like this, right? No problem. Our 5-year-old self needs to be spoken to like that. No problem. But there's another way of speaking about it, which I think is a little bit more refined. Right? Let me give you, instead of the pot of the gold analogy, let me give you a better analogy. Right? Imagine you had a 50th wedding anniversary party. Imagine we were there. And then there at the head of the table, you have the guy and the gal. And they look into each other's eyes. Mm-hmm. And it's like fireworks going off in the background. Mm-hmm. Can you hear the idea, though, that the feeling that they're going to be feeling for one another is simply the experience of the sum total of the choices that each one made towards the other, minus the missed opportunities and the times they chose against each other, thereby building a conceptual wall between the two of them, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing more, nothing less. You hear that?
A lot of
right? Well, yeah, if you get mathematical about it. But the point is, right, that like, it's not like two different worlds, right? Meaning it's not so separate. it's not like, okay, I'm gonna do all these choices now in my life for 50 years so that I can experience the bliss of the moment at the 50th wedding anniversary party later. And like somehow the fifth, like that's gonna be the reward for the work I put in here. No, it's a much more holistic and matter of fact than that, isn't it? In this example I'm bringing, right? It's just the relationship is what it is, right? And so the point isn't, I imagine someone's like, you know what? Imagine someone's like, I'm gonna put in all this work and make the choices I need to make to be nice to the spouse, even though it's a pain, but because I'm gonna get some reward at the end, I'm gonna get that experience of the 50th wedding anniversary. They're gonna throw me a party, it's gonna feel nice. How's the relationship sound?
Not so
Weak,
great.
low, shallow, right? Right? Okay, so what we're saying, hopefully, right? It's okay. Maybe if I need that kind of motivation to think about it like that, one sec. If I need my motivation to think about that, I guess that's better than not doing it. I guess it's better than not being nice, than not being dedicated. I guess, but like, really, hopefully, what we're going for is that, like, no, be in the moment. You're in a relationship. That's who you are. Like one of your identities or roles or whatever in this life, let's say in this relationship, in this example, is to be spouse, to be husband, to be wife, to be what, right? To be a good person, to right. And so dare I share with you that the same thing applies to, okay, being a Jew, right? To experience being a Jew means not just, okay, I'm going to do all this stuff, which I really is a pain in the ass, but I'm just going to do this because they told me in the books that in the end I'm going to avoid hell and I'm going to go to heaven and all that kind of stuff, right? Again, my 5-year-old self needs that kick from time to time, hopefully, right? And you know, hopefully the more refined and the better we get, the less it needs that, right? And for those who only are on that level, by the way, in Judaism, beseder, that's a level. That's a level. I can't deny the authenticity of that and the legitimacy of that. And we need to have that level strong. The truth is, hopefully we get a higher up, but that should be the fallback position at least, and that's a level, certainly. I don't mean to disrespect that, but we should have higher. I would hope we could have higher, more refined ways of looking at it, which get much more into, which feel, much more right, which feel much more refined, much more elevated, much more dignified, And so this is what I would share with you. Next source we have over here, Yehuda Loy, Maharal Prague, Nesivas Ol, Nesiva Ahavat Reya 1. He says like this. He says this is the idea that to be in this oneness relationship with Hashem, that is real in every moment. He says this is what the certain karbanot are all about. We spoke about the karbanot. This is the same concept here that we're talking about here. Just like a true dedicated servant. And by the way, let's just be clear. A lot of times we get messed up. We get messed up with these English translations and American history and all that kind of stuff. Servant here doesn't mean someone who's being like, God forbid, like whipped and all this kind of stuff. Servant means someone who's dedicated to you. It's like more like Alfred in Batman. Okay, that's what we're talking about over here. That he's like views it as a privilege. He appreciates who that person is, and he's dedicating. He's 100% committed and dedicated, and honored to be involved in the service of, that person, or that individual. In this case, Hashem. In this case, God. Right. So, but he gives an example. Okay, just like a butler to someone who's refined and he's there, and it's a full thing. I dedicate my life to this cause, to this service. Raku of do tamidi. It's a full-time gig. Right. I filled in the blank there. Right. That there's a carbon during the morning and there's a carbon during the afternoon. What's that carbon called? That carbon is called Shezen Amar. This verse, which talks about during the morning, during the afternoon, it means to tell you. It's called a carbon tamid. What does tamid mean? Always. It means constant. It's the always carbon. It's the constant carbon, because that's the idea that that's the idea we're supposed to be. That we're constant. It's in every moment. It's in every moment we're here, we're present, we're living out this relationship in our moments, right? The davar is a klal b'Torah. This is the klal. This is the general principle in the Torah, a grand principle in the Torah. Right? That the purpose and the intent of the Torah is that a person be dedicated to Hashem in the moment, dedicated to the relationship. Right? The purpose of the Torah isn't, okay, feel victimized for 120 years so that you can get a pot of gold later. That is not the goal. If that's what we did, okay, that's better than doing nothing, right? Better go than not doing anything, for sure. There's legitimacy to that. But that's not the goal. The goal is that a person should be dedicated to Hashem and to godliness and bring godliness into this world because the person is involved in the moment, right? The Kol Shar Torah Perusha, and the rest of the Torah is commentary. How about that? The rest of the Torah is commentary. I mean, the rest of the Torah, the purpose is to have that dedication with Hashem. The rest of the Torah is, okay, how do I do that? Which is an interesting thing, by the way, because a lot of times we talk about this idea, and this more of, I guess, the Yeshivish and Litvish perspective, which is that, like, okay, the Torah learning is the number one thing. That is the goal. That is the goal. And so a lot of times, for a lot of history, that was the focus. The focus was like, that, like, okay, that is the goal, to be the grand Talmid Chacham, to be the Torah learner. And Tov, there's plenty to back that up, and that's for sure a legitimate path. However, we see from the Maharal that there's another perspective. There's another way of looking at it. Two totally legitimate things. But there's another way of looking at it, which, and this was further emphasized by Chassidut in a major way. Because what could happen? Let's say you're not that Torah scholar, right? Let's say that's not you. So then what? What is my life? You could easily become very disenfranchised. And so one of the big things that the Hasidic movement was about was about shifting the emphasis. By the Hasidic movement did not invent anything. Right? It's just shift of emphasis. There's so many different psukim that could show so many different things and so many different angles on things. And so certain things, just in the way of society, like certain things get emphasized and certain things get put on the back burner. Just what it is. Right? So what Hasidus did was shift the emphasis on certain things. And one of them is this. Right? Hasidus said, basically when Maharal is considered, the Baal Shem Tov is considered the father of Hasidut. But Maharal is considered like the grandfather of Hasidut. Maharal is one of these unifying figures that really everyone goes back to. Also the Arizal. Everyone points back to them. So I'm going to show you another source. Rav Daniel Frisch. Have you heard of him? Okay. He wrote a very famous Perush, very famous commentary on the Zohar called the Matok Midrash. Also, he wrote a book on Sfirat HaOmer that's become popular called Uspartem Lachem. Matter of fact, someone translated it into English called the 10 Sfirot. And maybe you've seen a funky cover. I think it's like a red cover with some circles on it or something. You have seen it. Okay, fine. But you don't realize what I'm talking about. I think it's called the 10 Sfirot. And there's also another one for the 10 days of awe or something like that. 10 days of repentance, 10 days of awe. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Maybe they still have mayonnaise?
There's, I'm sure they still have mayonnaise for sure. But anyway, so he says, introduction to that book on Sfirat HaOmer, in the introduction to the book, the Sfirat HaOmer, Uspartem Lachem, he says like this: Baruch HaGolet kishenechleshu adarot. Throughout this long exile, as the generations have gotten weaker, v'nitma'atu hatarot, and whatever, weaker in spirituality as well. There was a concern that people, listen to this, there is a concern that people would make their learning the ikar, the main thing, vet avodat haborei tafel, and their service of God, the second rate. Like that's not, as if that's not the thing. That would be like the subordinate thing, the subservient thing. That would be like the thing in the background. Like that's not important. As if that's not as important. Azai richima borelenu. So then God had mercy on us in our weakened spiritual perspective and state. And sent us the Baal Shem Tov and his holy, wonderful students, in order that they should act in order to awaken the holy Jews. In order that they should go ahead and do tshuva and make the Torah the vessel, the vehicle for serving Hashem and for rectifying one's characteristics, one's midot, one's emotional intelligence. Right? Wild, right? You're like, no, and that's totally fine. But for many people, could be considered very radical. because what he's saying here is that like it's easy to fall into a trap where we're so focused on learning that we forget to integrate it, and to the point that like we, instead of using it as transformative, he's saying basically that Torah isn't maybe one line of reasoning, and that's partially okay to look at it this way, is that Torah learning is the goal, right? But if we buy into that too much, then when are we actually doing it? When are we actually living it? When are we actually integrating it in our lives? And so he says that people have either could or were on the way to or already had fallen into that trap. And so to be able to also refocus and recalibrate and see the Torah as instead of the goal, the vehicle to the goal, which is personal transformation, right? Which is serving Hashem, and then also rectifying the way a person's acting in the world. So inyan zeh anu motziim b'kol sifrei talmidei Baal Shem Tov. So this concept that we find in all of the books, the holy books of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, b'chol hadarot, throughout all the generations, kasher kol sifrei mele'im b'derech avodat habori, because all of their books are filled with different pathways to serve Hashem. How do I refine myself in this way? What's good advice for this particular situation and this downfall, this struggle, whatever it is? How do I rectify this? How do I rectify that? Different things about learning about the inner aspects of a person and emotions and all this kind of stuff, thought versus emotions, and how I deal with situations. And so it goes into, again, refining personal midot, which there actually are midot. What's going on within us has its root in the spiritual sources, the spiritual sefirot. And so what we have going on with us is a human version, human parallel to the grander spiritual concepts. And so anyway, point is to recognize that our life and our relationship with Hashem is in every moment. And perhaps that's one of the ideas of the concept of Psukei de Zimra, is to get involved in what a song is, which is in the singing, in the moment, and being awake to that, and being conscious and being on fire with these things that we're doing in Judaism. Yeah. Thoughts, questions, ideas? Do you want to say something?
I had 2 comments and I've been saving them. One on the songs, like Doc, I immediately thought of like a very relatable thing. It's like sometimes I'll be like in a mood and I want to hit like a certain song with a certain emotion, and like before I hit that song, I'm feeling like anxious and like I just want to get to the song. And if I'm the whole time during each song I'm playing on my playlist thinking like, no, this isn't it, next, like I'm never in the moment actually feeling the song. And then sometimes you hit the song and it's just like in the moment and you're like, whoa, like that was exactly like the experience that I was like, whoa, that was it. And it's like very relatable to like the songs and all. During Psukei de Zimra, I'm always thinking, okay, when should I esrei? Like I literally the whole time I'm like, so how many minutes do I have left till I have to leave? Like, let's just flip the pages.
Right.
So it's very similar like emotion that I should hit the song, hit the emotion.
There you go.
And then also for the second source, when I was in seminary, I learned a lot of Michtav Maleo. We had a class on it, and a lot of Rav Dessler says is very similar. That he says like, what if the concept of Olam Haba isn't like this beautiful, like here are your mitzvah coins, and you put them in a bucket, and then it goes cha-ching. Here are your tickets. Here's your prize. And my teacher said it's your prize is the relationship you've been building. Like, can you imagine like right now, Chas v'shalom, you died, you go to Olam Haba. What does your relationship with Hashem look like right now? It was like a very scary idea because we were like, wait a minute, it's not like how many mitzvahs I did. She was like, why'd you do the mitzvahs? Like, what do you thought you were like putting money into a bank and like, oh, Hashem one day will like realize something with my mitzvahs and like make it happen, which it's a good thing you did them, but you didn't actually have any of the connection. So it's a very like.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about this about what you're sharing is like, transitioning from what I like to call checklist Judaism to relationship Judaism, or checklist Judaism to passionate Judaism. It's like, and a lot of us, and this is one of the difficult challenges that people face after they've been, religious for a number of time and for a certain amount of time, and certainly people who grew up in observant homes do have the struggle of like, okay, I wake up in the morning, I do this, check, okay, good, I avoided hell for this morning. It is what it is, and again, that's a level. But okay, that's the struggle of anyone who's been in this for a while, is to keep it real, just like anything. Listen, just like you got a honeymoon phase, and then you have what's it called, and sometimes it's like that, obviously it's not everyone's story, but like, that's the stereotype, you have honeymoon phase, and then it's like, okay, then like you have to enter into real life, okay, then we see what happens, right? So that's the idea, for sure. So that's we have to do what we need to stay conscious, to stay in the moment, to stay aware, keep this going, to remember why we're here, remember what we're doing here, and yes, to have a routine, but also to not become routine-like. That makes any sense. Because we do need to have a discipline. Anytime you want to build anything, it takes you have a clear picture of how you have a picture is a bad word. You have a clear, like, a process, a discipline. If you want to build anything of worth, it takes like a certain structure. That's the word I was looking for, a certain structure in order to go ahead and build forward. All right, maybe a certain level of repetition as well. A certain level of repetition as well, right? Person wants to build muscle, doesn't just go into the body, into their once and do like this. No, you can make it into a practice. That's the word I'm also looking for. Make it into a practice. We have to be practice with structure, with a soul behind it, right? Like the Gemara says, that a person just goes and does a routine without any intent and consciousness, so then the person just sent the body in front of Hashem without a soul, right? So we got to work on both. The struggle of the person who's new to Jewish observance is a struggle of quantity. There's just so much stuff to do. But the person, just one second, the person who's either been in a while or who grew up with it or whatever, is usually a struggle not of quantity but of quality, right? Keep staying like the work is the struggle, and the work is what's going on over here, as opposed to just like, okay, there's just so much stuff. It's like, no, we can contain the stuff. The question is just, can I be conscious while I'm doing this stuff? Can I be passionate about it? Can I really actually care? It really makes you, with vigor. Yeah. So I'm sad that, okay, everybody in their own journey. Yeah, what do you want to say?
So sometimes, like, what happens if you just don't have the soul for it at the moment? Like, you want to, but you woke up and you had a hard day.
So like that's a real relationship.
So the truth, yeah, that's exactly right. It's like a real relationship. So Baal Shem Tov actually says sometimes that's the biggest thing. The fact that you are totally not feeling it, but you stand up and you do whatever, you pray whatever you can. Sometimes that's the biggest prayer, right? So there's a big statement, and that's what I'm trying to say also. That's what I'm trying to not diminish that side of it, because a real relationship includes that too. It means that you're saying there's something real here, even if I'm not feeling it. But even though I'm not feeling it, there's still something real here, right? So like there's something to that. There's a certain yira in the relationship as well. Ahava is good. We're talking a lot about ahava, but we also need the concept of yira. If it's real, that means you have the concept of yira. Yira means awe. Yira means respect. It means acknowledge that it's there, acknowledge that it's real, right? So like, if I'm only doing something nice for my spouse, because like today I'm passionate about it, but tomorrow maybe I'm not going to be feeling so great about it. So it's like not the best, you know what I mean? But like, no, I have a commitment to something. I'm doing it even when I'm not feeling it, So that's definitely a very real thing. It's definitely a very real thing. A lot of times people who are freshly newly religious, Baal Tshuva, whatever, do not like to hear that. Do not like to hear those stories that involve those kind of things. But it's a part of real life, and real part of a relationship with Hashem. That yes, sometimes you're not going to feel it. There's going to come a day where whatever that thing is that you're doing now or that you're passionate about now, there's going to come a day where you do not feel like doing that thing. It's going to happen one day. Doesn't mean it's going to happen forever. It doesn't mean you're going to stop and then you're never going to feel passionate about it again. No, but there is going to come a day when you're not feeling it, and that's beseder. That's part of the whole story. That's part of the story. And then, when you're able to stand strong in those moments, in those quote unquote lows, okay, don't worry, the high is going to come back. You're going to be, or at least there's going to be something deeper that's going on with you, because it was real for you even when you weren't feeling it, right? And there's a story I like to tell, and I preface it by saying a lot of times Baal Tshuvas do not like this story. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you that straight out. But there's a story I like to tell about this guy who would come around to our house and Shabbat meals and stuff for a bunch of years, and bring people and stuff like this. And then whatever, the years passed. Thank God, he became more connected to Judaism. He became Torah observant. He got married, had a few kids, whatever. And he also became a tour guide. And tour guide, we're blessed to be in the old city. And so there would be times where a lot of, it takes a group around a bunch of places and then ends in the old city, right? And sometimes the tour guide's life is a little difficult, right? Because sometimes it's even like they got to get up very early in order to go get the family. A lot of times they have to get the car and then they have to get the family. It's like a whole thing. I wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning and then you have a long day because people want to get in as much as they can on their tour, right? So there'll be times he comes by tired, 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night after a long day like this. And then there was one time he's like on the couch chilling with us a little bit after his long day's over, and then he's about to go home, and he gets up and he's like, damn it, I have to daven Maariv. And I was like, now you're an Orthodox Jew. Now you're an Orthodox Jew. So why do I share that? I share that because it's real. That's real. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Is that if that's the sum total of the entirety of your Judaism? So then, yeah, that's going to be then maybe like you're feeling like a victim of Judaism and whatever, and we have to deal with that. And by the way, there's a lot of people who do feel that way, and that's okay. That's part of life. We have to deal with it. Yes, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it's bad. Even if you want to say that it's bad, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's the reality of your experience. You need to be authentic with that. A lot of people are like, you ask them a question, it's like they say like the answer that they think they're supposed to say. And it's just like, it doesn't help them. But hold on, Judaism says I'm supposed to say this. It's just like, wait, what do you feel? Like, what do you mean Judaism says? But what do you actually feel? I'm not allowed to feel it. What do you mean? But if you're feeling that, you're feeling that. What are you talking about, you know? So it actually happened to me this morning, and I was joking around with someone about it, right? Someone has asked me about, like, someone said to me, like, a guy I learned with in the morning, said to me something about, like, what do you know about this? Or I know about that. And I'm like, I think I said to him something like, dude, I don't know anything except the fact that there's one God. And then he started laughing at me. I'm like, and you know, the truth is I'm only saying that because I know that's the thing I'm supposed to say, you know? So like, you know, okay, so I do know that there's one God. That was just a joke, but there's truth to that. Like a lot of times we'll be answering the thing that, like, you know, seminary they told us to answer, you know, right? How you doing? Baruch Hashem. It's like, okay, you didn't answer the question, right? You didn't say Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, good. Baruch Hashem, life sucks. Baruch Hashem, comes Latova. I'm pissed off at God today. I know it's good, but I don't really feel it's good. You know, whatever. But like, just be real, be authentic. Until you're being authentic and having a relationship with Hashem, you're just having this thing. You're just repeating the words on a paper. Words on a paper are nice, but if they're not really where you're at, so don't be some portrait of what you think you're supposed to be. You need to be real with yourself. You need to be real with your rabbis. You need to be real with your marriage therapist. You need to be real with, you need to be real with yourself. You need to be real with your situation, you know. Without that, then it's just at some point that crumbles. At some point, the pieces start to fall apart. So you got to be real. I don't know how we get into this rant anyway.
What do you do when
Can I ask?
What do I do when? Okay, so there you go. Hopefully that helped deal with it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, awesome. I was just wondering, so like in a relationship, like whether it's with a person or with God, and we have to like change different things about ourselves, and like maybe you feel a little uncomfortable, or I think maybe you said like refining. So like what if the change doesn't feel authentic? Like bowing, for example, like feels odd, but like we're told to bow. So like at what point does it matter that it feels authentic? And at one point is like what we're supposed to do supposed to change us?
So I would say that the healthy approach to this, and yes, it's relevant in relationship, it's definitely relevant in Judaism, and it's definitely relevant in relationships, and, you know, spouse kind of relationships. I think though that we have to be able to go inside of ourselves and say, okay, am I extending myself and going out of my comfort zone because I'm ready to actually go out of my comfort zone and extend myself? Or am I being a victim of an expectation? Am I being victimized here? Is this an act of me extending myself? Or is this an act of me being a victim to an expectation?
Mm-hmm. I hear that.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it for a while. Just let me know what happens. Okay. That's an important one. I have a lot to say about that. But I don't even know where to begin right now in the 2-second answer, but that's essentially, I think that's the line. That's the line. Now the question is, maybe not on camera, but if there's a follow-up to that, So sometimes people have a follow, well, what about this? I can't tell this. But like really, if we can sense that, that's the line. And so that means also with Judaism as well, right? Like let's say go to the weight limit. Just think about it like this. We're talking about growth. We're talking about expanding of ourselves. We're talking about it in terms of a relationship. We're talking about in terms of Judaism. Hold on, let's go on a level lower. Physical expansion of self. Let's say we're trying to become more healthy, more workout, more whatever. Person, let's say, wants to build their body physically. Okay, so you go to the weight room, right? And you put down on the weights. If you just put what's totally comfortable, you're not doing anything. Okay. If you put a little more than what's comfortable, where it's difficult, but I could do it, So now, okay, I'm stretching myself and I'm okay with that stretch. I'm expanding in myself and I'm not in my comfort zone, but I'm comfortable with the extension of myself, with stretching myself in that manner. But if I'm like, hey man, I'm supposed to be a bodybuilder now, that's what they told me. I'm supposed to be at my full potential. So give me 400 pounds.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, you're gonna be a victim of some picture of who you're supposedly supposed to be. And then you're gonna get crushed, right? And so what we need to do is be able to do that in our relationships, whether it be a relationship with Judaism, Hashem, all that stuff, whether it be a relationship with another individual. And it could be that, like we say, okay, in Judaism, this bowing thing, for example, feels uncomfortable. Okay, well, is it uncomfortable? And therefore it's outside my comfort zone, but I'm ready to go ahead and extend myself. And it's uncomfortable because it's something I haven't done. And it doesn't speak to me and it seems like outdated. But I'm ready to go ahead and expand on myself in order to do it. Or I really have beef with it and it's really a problem and I'm really feeling this is something I really don't want to do and my inner voice is shouting no, 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 no. And then but some person is expecting me to do it. It has somehow drilled into my head that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so even though my inner voice is like screaming no, I'm going ahead and not listening to that. Do that for a while. You're going to build up some nice resentment and then start being passive aggressive and then explosion. That's usually how it goes. I skipped the inner wound of trauma. That happens first. Then we get to, but you get it. You get the point, right? So this is how it goes. What else we got? Questions, thoughts, ideas, anybody? All right, we're going to call it here. Yasher Koach Gadol. Peace out to everybody. I'm going to cut the recording 1 second here.
Recording hasn't.
Does it say it?
I don't know.